#1 Brazilian world music album I did over here, douchebag. I mean, and that it just promotes, and that's his whole mission, just to
with everybody, because it's a very small business, it's a very small industry, and more than the professional purposes.
Former Megadeth members are finally speaking out against Dave Mustaine, and they're not holding back at all. We're talking about secret beefs, public call-outs, canceled tours, guitar solo drama, and even a challenge for a guitar duel. From Jeff Young's explosive accusations to David Ellefson's messy exit and Chris Poland's quiet frustration, we're breaking down all the stories one by one. Jeff Young is one of the former guitarists from Megadeth, and recently he has had a lot to say about the band's founder, Dave Mustaine. Young played with Megadeth during their early years, especially on the famous album called So Far, So Good. So What, released in 1988. For many fans, this was an amazing time for the band. But behind the scenes, things weren't always good between Young and Mustaine, and now Young is openly sharing his side of the story. Jeff Young recently shared some angry posts online about his time in Megadeth, and especially about Dave Mustaine. In these posts, Young accused Mustaine of lying about what really happened during their time together in the band. According to Young, Mustaine had many problems that caused the band serious trouble, and he even claims Mustaine needed help leaving the stage after concerts because he wasn't well enough to finish shows properly. But the accusations didn't stop there. Young also accused Mustaine of not respecting Megadeth fans. He mentioned that Mustaine would sometimes treat fans badly, describing situations where fans asked for something simple, like a guitar pick, and Mustaine reacted rudely instead of kindly. Young's main point was clear. He believes Mustaine often blamed other people for problems that he himself caused, and he didn't want to let Mustaine rewrite history without being challenged. Young was so upset by what Mustaine said about him that he publicly challenged Mustaine to a guitar duel. He suggested they both play solos from their famous albums note for note on stage in front of everyone. With such heavy accusations, fans wondered how Mustaine would react, and his response definitely raised eyebrows. When it comes to dealing with criticism from former bandmates, Mustaine often uses one of his most famous sayings, "A dog with no teeth barks the loudest." But what exactly does this mean? In simple terms, it's Mustaine's way of saying that people who complain the loudest usually don't have the power to change anything. They might shout and make noise, but their words can't really hurt or affect him anymore. Mustaine feels like some former members of Megadeth become bitter after leaving the band. When he talks about bitterness, he means that these ex-bandmates are holding on to anger or frustration long after their time in the group has ended. According to Mustaine, instead of letting things go and moving forward, these former members choose to stay upset and keep talking negatively about their past with Megadeth. Mustaine believes this bitterness often comes out when these musicians want attention for their new projects. He thinks they criticize him and Megadeth publicly to help themselves stand out, because negativity and drama can sometimes attract more attention. Mustaine also points out that when someone is fired or has to leave a famous band, it's natural they might feel upset or angry at first. However, he strongly believes that most of the musicians who have left Megadeth managed to get past their initial disappointment. In fact, he claims to still have good relationships with many of his former bandmates. Mustaine mentioned musicians like Gar Samuelson, Nick Menza, and Marty Friedman as examples of people who he stayed friendly with even after they parted ways professionally. He respects them and acknowledges their contributions positively. One clear example he mentioned was Sean Drover, who sent Mustaine kind messages when he was diagnosed with cancer. For Mustaine, this is proof that not everyone leaves Megadeth bitterly. In his mind, if most former members can stay respectful and understanding, then the negative and bitter reactions from just a few are less meaningful. The tension didn't stop there. Young had even more issues with Mustaine, especially when it came to who actually wrote those iconic guitar solos. Young explained that when he was part of Megadeth, he often came up with solos on the spot during recording sessions. These solos were his own creations, not something that Mustaine had carefully planned out or sung to him, as Mustaine sometimes claimed in interviews. Young said that Mustaine has publicly suggested he guided the solos by humming or singing the notes to Young, but according to Young, this simply never happened. He strongly feels that Mustaine says these things to make himself look more talented and in control, even if it means taking away credit from Young. Feeling frustrated and angry about this situation, Jeff Young decided to speak out publicly. He didn't want fans to believe Mustaine's version of the story without knowing the truth. So, to prove his point, Young decided to challenge Mustaine to something really interesting: a guitar duel. This guitar duel challenge was Young's way of making sure everyone could see who was telling the truth. Young dared Mustaine to perform 2 songs from Megadeth's early years together, note for note, in front of fans and cameras. This meant they would each have to play not only their own solos, but also the solos of other guitarists exactly as they were originally recorded. The idea behind Young's challenge was simple. He believed Mustaine wouldn't be able to play the solos perfectly because he never truly created them in the first place. To make things even fairer, Young had some strict rules for this duel. First, Mustaine couldn't get help from anyone else. He couldn't ask another guitarist or teacher to show him the solos. Instead, he would have to learn and play everything completely by ear, just like Young claimed he did back in the day. Young felt this was the only fair way to prove who really had the guitar-playing talent in Megadeth. But their arguments weren't limited to music. Young also made shocking claims about Mustaine's behavior during a canceled Australian tour. Dave Mustaine publicly claimed that the Australian tour back in the late 1980s was canceled because Jeff Young was having problems with drugs. Mustaine specifically mentioned that Young had run out of drugs and didn't want to travel anymore. But Young strongly disagreed with Mustaine's version of events and decided to speak out about what he says actually happened. According to Young, the real reason the tour was canceled wasn't because of him at all. Instead, he explained, it was Dave Mustaine who was struggling with serious issues at the time. Young said Mustaine was dealing with heavy substance abuse problems, making it very difficult for him to perform concerts properly. He mentioned that during concerts, Mustaine was often unable to stand or play his guitar well, which forced the other band members and the crew to cover for him. Young claimed that Mustaine's problems were so serious that he needed help getting off stage at the end of performances. Because of these issues, the whole band suffered. Young described how he and other band members even had to secretly tell the sound technicians to turn down Mustaine's guitar and vocals during live shows. This way, fans wouldn't realize how much Mustaine's issues were affecting the concerts. The Australian tour was canceled, according to Young, mainly because Mustaine needed to rush back home for another attempt at rehabilitation. Young explained that Mustaine went to rehab many times, but always struggled to stay sober. The canceled tour wasn't about Young or any other band member. Instead, Young said it was directly caused by Mustaine's personal struggles. Even more shocking, Young accused Mustaine of asking him and other bandmates to secretly bring substances into his rehab center hidden inside everyday items like soda cans. Young felt very uncomfortable and angry about this request. He says this shows how badly Mustaine was struggling and that Mustaine unfairly blamed Young to hide his own problems from the public. Young was especially upset about these accusations because he himself had overcome health struggles and survived a serious illness. He said Mustaine trying to blame him falsely was completely unfair and deeply hurtful. Young's explanation aimed to clear his own name and make fans aware of what he believed to be the real story behind the canceled tour. Young isn't the only former member who's had problems with Mustaine. David Ellefson, a founding member, also shares a complicated past with him. David Ellefson and Dave Mustaine have a complicated past that goes back to the very start of Megadeth. Ellefson was the original bassist and co-founder alongside Mustaine when the band began in 1983. He stayed in Megadeth for nearly 20 years, playing bass and backing vocals on all the early, iconic albums. Fans loved Ellefson and often saw him as a key part of Megadeth's success. However, things took a turn in the early 2000s. Ellefson and Mustaine started arguing about money, specifically royalties, which is the money musicians get paid for their songs and albums. Ellefson felt he wasn't getting his fair share of what Megadeth was earning. Because of this disagreement, Ellefson took legal action against Mustaine, filing a lawsuit that accused Mustaine of withholding money he felt he deserved. This legal battle caused a big rift between them, and they stopped speaking for several years. Mustaine was deeply hurt and upset by Ellefson's lawsuit. He felt that Ellefson's actions had damaged their friendship, not just their professional relationship. Eventually, Mustaine decided to continue Megadeth without Ellefson, recruiting new musicians to fill his spot. This was a very hard time for fans who missed seeing Ellefson on stage and wondered if the band would ever feel the same again. After about 8 years apart, in 2010, something surprising happened. Ellefson received a message from Sean Drover, the drummer of Megadeth at the time, suggesting it was the right moment to reconnect with Mustaine. Ellefson agreed to meet up, and when they talked, they managed to put aside their past problems. Mustaine and Ellefson forgave each other, reconciled, and Ellefson officially rejoined the band. This second stint in Megadeth seemed like a fresh start for both musicians. They performed together again, and fans were thrilled to see them reunited. Ellefson even said it felt as if he never left the band. Both musicians claimed their friendship was stronger because they had been apart and had learned from their past mistakes. Sadly, their renewed relationship didn't last forever. In 2021, Ellefson faced some personal issues that became public online, causing a major controversy. Ellefson suddenly found himself in a difficult situation after personal videos of him appeared online. These videos quickly became viral and caused a lot of confusion and anger among fans. At first, some people on the internet accused Ellefson of behaving badly, even suggesting he had been inappropriate with someone who was underage. Ellefson quickly came forward to say this wasn't true at all. He explained clearly that the videos were private between consenting adults and had been shared online without his permission. The woman involved also confirmed this and publicly said she was an adult and that the videos were leaked without her agreement. Even though Ellefson explained himself clearly, the damage was already done. The controversy became too big, and Megadeth's leader, Dave Mustaine, felt he had no choice but to let Ellefson go from the band again. Mustaine officially announced Ellefson's removal on Megadeth's social media, explaining that the situation made it impossible for Ellefson to stay. Fans were shocked as Ellefson had recently rejoined Megadeth after a long break, and things seemed to be going well. After Ellefson was dismissed, Dave Mustaine started to publicly distance himself from Ellefson. In interviews, Mustaine didn't show support for Ellefson and seemed very eager to move past the controversy quickly. Mustaine stated clearly that he felt Ellefson's actions had created too many problems and that it was necessary to find a new bassist to re-record Ellefson's parts for their upcoming album. By doing this, Mustaine made it clear he wanted Ellefson completely separated from Megadeth's future projects. Mustaine's reaction was strong. He quickly replaced Ellefson's bass parts on Megadeth's new album with recordings from another musician. This decision showed Mustaine's desire to keep Megadeth's reputation clean and protect the band from further negative attention. Ellefson, on the other hand, felt hurt by Mustaine's reaction. he openly said that Mustaine hadn't supported him during this tough situation and had treated him unfairly. For fans, this was a complicated issue. Many felt sympathy for Ellefson because his personal life had been publicly exposed without his permission. Others understood Mustaine's decision, believing he was doing what was best for the band. This controversy once again reminded fans how fragile the relationships within Megadeth could be, especially between Mustaine and Ellefson, whose friendship had already been tested before. Although Ellefson faced tough times, he's bouncing back in new projects and finding creative freedom beyond Megadeth. One of Ellefson's biggest new projects is a band called The Lucid. He started this band alongside well-known musicians like guitarist Drew Fortier, drummer Mike Heller, and vocalist Vinnie Dombrowski. Fans were excited because The Lucid has a different sound compared to Megadeth. Their music blends rock and metal, but with a more modern and melodic feel. In 2021, The Lucid released several singles like Maggot Wind, Damned, and Hair. Soon after, they launched their first album, simply called The Lucid. Ellefson seemed happy about this new band because he had more freedom to try new ideas and styles that weren't always possible when he was in Megadeth. Another exciting band Ellefson formed after leaving Megadeth is called Dieth. This band goes into much heavier territory, playing powerful death metal music. Ellefson teamed up with guitarist and vocalist Guilherme Miranda and drummer Miko Wiseko. They quickly got attention in the metal community because fans didn't expect Ellefson to move into such an intense style of music. Dieth released several powerful songs, including their popular track In the Hall of the Hanging Serpents, and soon after, they introduced their debut album, To Hell and Back. Fans were even more surprised when Ellefson sang lead vocals for the first time in his career on one of the album's tracks, Walk With Me Forever. Beyond just starting new bands, Ellefson also enjoys a new sense of creative freedom. After leaving Megadeth, he had fewer restrictions and could explore different musical styles. Ellefson openly talked about how leaving Megadeth gave him a fresh start to express himself without worrying about fitting into the specific sound or expectations of his former band. He was free to experiment and try new things, like singing lead vocals, something he hadn't really done before. Interestingly, Ellefson and Young decided to join forces, bringing fans a nostalgic reunion of early Megadeth classics. These two former Megadeth musicians came together to create a new project called Kings of Thrash. Fans of Megadeth were really excited about this because it meant seeing these legendary musicians playing together again after many years. The main idea behind Kings of Thrash was to celebrate and perform songs from the early years of Megadeth, especially those that fans loved from the band's first albums. Ellefson and Young wanted to give fans the experience of hearing classic Megadeth songs played live by the original musicians who helped create them. This idea became very popular because many longtime Megadeth fans missed the old style and wanted to see the musicians who originally played those songs perform together again. Ellefson and Young's live shows quickly became popular because they brought so much energy and passion back to these classic songs. They performed famous Megadeth tracks from albums like Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, and So Far, So Good. So what? They even played songs that Megadeth hadn't performed live in years, making their concerts feel special and unique for fans. Kings of Thrash didn't just stop at Ellefson and Young. They also invited other former Megadeth members, like guitarist Chris Poland, to perform with them as special guests. This added another level of excitement, giving fans a chance to see even more of the original band members back together on stage. Not everyone is entirely against Mustaine. Former guitarist Chris Poland shares mixed feelings about his time in the band. Chris Poland was an important guitarist in the early years of Megadeth. He played on the band's first two albums, killing is my business, and business is good, and peace sells. But who's buying? Many fans remember Poland for his unique guitar style, which helped define Megadeth's sound during those early days. One positive thing Poland mentioned was that Dave Mustaine gave him a lot of creative freedom while they were recording. Poland explained in interviews that Mustaine never strictly told him what to play on guitar solos. Instead, Mustaine usually gave Poland space to come up with his own solos. Poland liked this freedom because it allowed him to express himself fully. He felt respected and appreciated as a guitarist during recording sessions, which made his experience enjoyable and rewarding. But even with these positive experiences, Poland also felt frustrated and upset about other things that happened while working with Megadeth. His biggest issue was related to how Mustaine handled Poland's recorded guitar parts later on. Poland discovered that some of his solos and guitar work were used by Mustaine again without his permission, especially during the remixing and re-release of older Megadeth albums. This unauthorized use of Poland's guitar parts made him feel disrespected. Poland believed it wasn't fair for Mustaine to reuse his original recordings without properly talking to him first or giving him any credit or financial compensation. He explained how upsetting it was to hear his own work used in ways he had never agreed to or approved. Poland felt strongly about this because it wasn't just about money, it was about respect and fairness. He believed Mustaine should have talked openly with him about using his music again. Instead, Poland felt Mustaine took advantage of his talent without proper acknowledgement. This created tension between Poland and Mustaine, making Poland's feelings about his Megadeth days very complicated. Despite these frustrations, Poland still had good things to say about working with Mustaine on a later album called The System Has Failed, which was recorded years after Poland first left Megadeth. Even though Chris didn't officially rejoin the band, Mustaine asked him to play lead guitar on a few tracks for the album. At that time, Megadeth wasn't working as a full band. Mustaine was basically recording a solo project, but because of contract rules, it had to be released as a Megadeth album. So he needed someone talented and reliable to help him out, and that's when he reached out to Poland. What made this experience different from the old days was that both Mustaine and Poland were sober. Back in the early Megadeth years, things were wild. The band members, including Mustaine and Poland, were dealing with personal struggles and unhealthy habits. That led to a lot of tension and drama. But this time around, it was calmer and more focused. Poland even said in interviews that it felt great to be working in a healthy and professional environment. Poland spoke highly of the recording sessions. He said the studio was top-notch and the equipment they used was amazing. He especially loved a vintage Marshall amp that gave him the perfect sound for his solos. He also enjoyed working with the producer, Ralph Patlin, who made everything go smoothly. For Poland, the experience wasn't stressful at all. It was fun and refreshing, which was very different from how things felt in the early days of Megadeth. Another thing Poland liked was the creative freedom. Mustaine didn't tell him exactly what to play. Instead, he gave Poland the freedom to come up with his own solos, just like he did in the past. This made Poland feel respected and trusted, and it helped bring out some of his best guitar work. Even some less-known former members, like Chuck Baylor, have had relatively peaceful relationships with Mustaine. Chuck Baylor is a drummer who played an important role in Megadeth's history. He joined the band during the late 1980s and appeared on the famous album called So Far, So Good, So What? This was an exciting time for Megadeth, as the band was becoming hugely popular around the world. Fans loved the powerful drumming style that Chuck Baylor brought to the band's music. Baylor's relationship with Dave Mustaine, Megadeth's leader, was mostly positive during his time with the band. Even though Mustaine is known for being a tough leader, Baylor has shared in interviews that he generally got along well with him. Baylor has often described Mustaine as someone who knew exactly what he wanted for Megadeth's music, and who pushed his bandmates to deliver their best performances every time. Chuck Bieler also appreciated Mustaine's musical talent and leadership. He mentioned how Mustaine's strong vision for Megadeth helped push everyone in the band to become better musicians. Bieler enjoyed the creative environment and respected Mustaine's work ethic, even though the pressure to perform at a high level was always there. He understood that Mustaine demanded excellence because he wanted Megadeth's music to be memorable and impressive. Even after leaving Megadeth, Baylor has generally remained respectful and positive about his experience in the band. Unlike some former members who had problems and arguments with Mustaine after leaving, Baylor chose to stay quiet and not criticize his former bandmate publicly. Fans have noticed this and often praise Baylor for his maturity and professionalism. Dave Mustaine himself has spoken positively about Chuck Baylor in the past. He has said that he appreciates Baylor's contributions to Megadeth's music and recognizes the importance of his drumming during a key period of the band's history. Even though Baylor was only with Megadeth for a short period, Mustaine acknowledges that Baylor played a significant role in helping the band become what it is today. And then there are those like Al Pitrelli and Jimmy DeGrasso, who quietly maintained good relationships without stirring up drama. Al Pitrelli and Jimmy DeGrasso are two former Megadeth members who took a very different path compared to others who left the band. Instead of getting into public arguments or calling out Dave Mustaine in interviews, both of them chose to stay respectful and quiet. This peaceful approach is something fans noticed and appreciated, especially because Megadeth has had so much drama with other ex-members. Al Pitrelli joined Megadeth in the late 90s as a guitarist. He played on the album The World Needs a Hero and brought a fresh style to the band. Jimmy DeGrasso was the drummer during that time too. Together, they were part of a Megadeth lineup that fans still look back on with a lot of love. Even after they left the band, neither Pitrelli nor DeGrasso said anything bad about Dave Mustaine or how their time in the band ended. Dave Mustaine has actually spoken positively about both of them. In interviews, he's mentioned that he has good memories of working with Pitrelli and DeGrasso. He didn't try to blame them for anything or act like they were part of the problem. Instead, Mustaine pointed out that the band had a solid run during that time, and they made good music together. That's not something Mustaine says about everyone who left the band, so it really stands out. What's also cool is that Pitrelli and DeGrasso didn't try to keep themselves in the spotlight by talking about Megadeth all the time. They moved on quietly and kept doing music in other bands or projects. Pitrelli continued playing with Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and DeGrasso worked with different rock and metal groups. They focused on their careers instead of getting involved in Megadeth's behind-the-scenes drama. Fans respect both of them for that. While some ex-members have used their Megadeth stories to promote their own new projects, Pitrelli and DeGrasso chose not to go that route. They didn't make loud claims or try to start fights online. They let their music speak for itself. Mustaine once said that if someone asked Pitrelli or DeGrasso about their time in Megadeth, they'd probably say they had a good run. That says a lot. It shows that not every exit from the band ends in bad blood. Sometimes people just move on and stay cool about it. That's what Mustaine seems to appreciate the most, when people leave without turning it into a big, ugly fight. Legendary guitarist Marty Friedman also chooses diplomacy, keeping things professional despite Megadeth's chaotic history. Marty Friedman is one of the most loved guitarists in Megadeth's history. He played with the band during their most successful years in the 1990s and helped create some of their biggest albums like Rust in Peace and Countdown to Extinction. Fans still talk about how amazing his guitar playing was and how much he added to the band's sound. Even after he left Megadeth, Marty always stayed respectful, and that's something that makes him really stand out. Unlike some other former members who have spoken badly about Dave Mustaine, Marty has stayed away from drama He doesn't post angry messages or give interviews where he complains about his time in the band. Instead, he takes a calm and mature approach. He's always been thankful for his time in Megadeth and never tried to ruin his past with the band by saying something negative. In fact, Dave Mustaine and Marty Friedman recently surprised fans by reuniting on stage. This happened in early 2023 when Marty joined Megadeth during their concert in Japan. It was a special moment, not just for the fans, but also for Mustaine and Friedman. They hadn't played together in years, and seeing them share the stage again showed that there's still respect and friendship between them. They performed some of their classic songs, and the crowd loved every second of it. Marty talked about the reunion later and said that it felt great to play with Mustaine again. He said that it wasn't about the past or any old issues. They were just focused on the music and the fans. That's the kind of attitude Marty is known for. He doesn't like drama, and he always tries to keep things peaceful and professional. Even when asked why he left Megadeth back in the early 2000s, Marty never said anything harsh. He explained that he just wanted to explore new music and do things that were different from what Megadeth was doing at the time. He didn't blame Mustaine or the band. He just made a personal choice and moved on. That's what makes Marty so respected, not just as a guitarist, but as a person. Some former members even went beyond diplomacy, like Shawn Drover, who showed genuine support during Mustaine's toughest moments. Shawn Drover is best known to Megadeth fans as the band's longtime drummer who played with them from 2004 to 2014. He was a strong part of the band for 10 years and helped record several albums, including United Abominations and Endgame. Even after he left Megadeth, Shawn never said anything bad about Dave Mustaine or the band. Instead, he kept things professional and respectful. One of the best examples of this was when he showed support for Mustaine during a really tough time. In 2019, Dave Mustaine told the world that he had been diagnosed with throat cancer. The news shocked fans everywhere because Mustaine is such a big name in metal music, and no one expected it. Many people from the music world sent messages of support, and one of them was Shawn Drover. Even though he had already left the band years earlier, Shawn took the time to reach out and show his support. Shawn sent Mustaine a personal message to wish him well and let him know he was thinking of him. This gesture meant a lot because it showed that Shawn didn't hold any grudges or hard feelings. He could have stayed quiet, like many former band members do, but instead, he chose to be kind and caring. That kind of action shows what kind of person Shawn really is, someone who values people over problems. What's even more special is that Mustaine remembered Shawn's message and mentioned it later in an interview. He said that even though many people had come and gone from the band, only a few reached out during his health crisis, and Shawn was one of them. That really stood out to Mustaine and showed that the bond they shared while making music together still mattered. With all this drama, it's no surprise that fans are deeply divided, each taking sides based on their favorite band members. Some fans fully support Dave Mustaine no matter what. They believe he's the reason Megadeth even exists, and that he has the right to make whatever decisions he wants. These fans often say things like, without Mustaine, there would be no Megadeth, and they trust him to do what's best for the band, even if it means letting people go or making tough choices. But on the other side, there are fans who feel bad for the former members. They think people like David Ellefson, Jeff Young, Chris Poland, and others were treated unfairly. These fans say it's not just one person who makes a band great, it's a team. They believe Mustaine sometimes pushes people away and doesn't always handle things the right way. Some fans think that instead of keeping the band together, Mustaine has created too many problems that didn't have to happen. There's also a group of fans who are kind of in the middle. They love the music and respect both sides. They understand that Mustaine has a strong personality and that being the leader of a big band like Megadeth isn't easy. But they also feel like some of the former members have a right to speak up, especially if they feel hurt or left out. On social media and YouTube, you can see these different opinions in the comments. Some fans are quick to defend Mustaine, while others cheer when old band members speak out. It's clear that Megadeth's audience is still very divided when it comes to who they support in these conflicts. But one thing most fans agree on is that the music is what brought them all together in the first place. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our future uploads. More rock stories, more band drama, and more music legends coming your way soon.